Security Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. Job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
Brandon Hayes, welcome to Security Halt podcast. How you doing, brother?
How are you, brother? Good to be here.
Good, man. It's we've been trying to make this happen for a while, dude, but you're a busy man.
And all over traveling. Just got done wrapping up some stuff with Trump being endorsed by FOP in North Carolina.
Dude.
So, yeah, good to be back home and kind of work out some stuff here for myself.
Bro, it's crazy times, man. Now more than ever. I did not think we'd have these many attempts on Donald Trump's live, and it just goes to show that if you're involved in this space, you can find a lot of much needed work.
You know, it's to touch on it quick. It's pretty wild. You know, he does have some good people that are on him, but he does need some extra outside private personnel to help observe some things that can be thwarted for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's kick it off, man. How'd you find yourself going into the military as a young man?
So I led a very eventful life for sure. I grew up in a very fast-paced environment. So my mother was a cop. I'm originally born and raised in St. Augustine, Florida, and I just moved back here actually not too long ago. Left at 18, and now 18 years later, here I am. So I grew up here, and was part of a lot of very intense things. My mother being a police officer and my grandfather owning a bar. So I was always kind of in the middle of some action, somewhere, somehow. But great time growing up. My godfather, my uncle was a third-degree black belt. So we were always into some sort of mischief. And I think that kind of, progressed me into my teenage years of being mischievous, I guess you could say. And that brought me into contact with some older guys who were some Army Rangers when I was in high school. And I had a problem with I guess you could say, fighting, I guess.
Yeah.
is the easiest way to put it. And so they reeled me in and took me under their wing. And at which point I realized the military might not be a bad option, to look at. And I didn't have anything really prepared or planned for college. And I was just kind of, I won't say out of control, but I was just doing me, not thinking about what was going on. So the military was never really something I thought about until I met those gentlemen in high school.
Yeah, it's funny, man. So many individuals find themselves in the same situation growing up. A little bit of a wild child, and a little bit of chaos in those later years in high school, and then end up finding ourselves in the military and shaping us up. But what about you? Going into the military is not always an easy transition if you're a bit of a wild child. How did you take to it?
I was blessed. I'll say that. So I had a lot of very good NCOs. A lot of people, have obviously difference of opinion as far as NCOs go, but I was fortunate enough. I had NCOs who, after hours, they would take you around the company area and you would have a one-on-one talking to with all five of them at the same time. And so being a loud mouth, smart mouth like I am, I learned very quickly, what life really was about in that moment. And so it was no longer being a kid and just being able to do what I want. And now there's consequences for my actions.
Yeah.
And, and that's when I started learning, just even saying certain things, this is what's going to happen. And so, with that being said, it kind of transformed me into, all right, well, this is what life is outside of, mommy and daddy or high school or at home, and no support network or no friends around you to tell you you're on your own. You're in the deep end and you better learn how to swim real quick.
Yeah.
And so, I was fortunate enough. I had some good leadership to mold me and show me some things. Now, with that being said, we all have things going on, so it's not 100%, but you learn most of your stuff through trials and tribulations. Everyone says it. It's kind of a broken record, but going from being a wild child into the military, I would definitely say most of your leaders that are remembered or known, uh, kind of come from that as a child, that adolescence, that whole piss and vinegar cowboy mentality. Most of the guys that I looked up to or had that were teaching me or beating it into me, um, they were the same way. And, I kind of look and it's kind of just like, not everyone is like that, but those type of, mischievous boys growing up is what we need to have capable warfighters. Those are the ones who,
Yeah.
you know, as some would say, who dares wins.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. There's something to be said about strict leadership and that wielding the stick and the carrot appropriately. It's what shapes us, man. Especially guys that don't have dads. That's something that I realized. Like we end up looking up to these, our first leaders, squad leaders, platoon sergeants. We end up looking to them for that mentorship we didn't have growing up. I know I certainly did, and it's crazy looking back, looking at those guys, and you think, oh, my squad leader, he's got everything figured out. My platoon sergeant's got everything figured out, and oftentimes there were guys in their early 30s or late 20s, like. And then when you hit those milestones in your own career, in your own life, you're like, fuck, I don't have this shit figured out.
It's funny you say that. I met my dad for the first time probably less than 8 years ago. And,
Oh, no shit.
that was it's probably one of the biggest things that, unbeknownst to me, it's probably what triggered me to join the military and find that structure, to find that, raw, barbaric type of man to get a hold of me and shape me and make me, what it is. Cause a lot of young men are looking to be led. They're looking to,
Yeah.
they all want to be that. And so, like you said, not knowing your father and then getting there. Now you got 5 dads, and that's a lot of dads to disappoint. And, I'll say this, I'll never forget. His name's Eric Wynn. And, the gentleman who was with him his name's Channing Moss. And, my platoon sergeant at the time, he'd just come back from Afghanistan and he had his nose completely cut off by an RPG-7 fin. And that RPG-7 was lodged into Moss's stomach. Now I was not there. But this gentleman, speaking of father figures, um, I remember us being on a ruck march and basically people are whining and complaining. And literally I was his RTO. I just showed up. I haven't been here 3 months. I'm brand new to 10th Mountain. And, this dude has no nose, literally no nose, just 2 fucking holes. And they're trying to reconstruct it with the skin from all over his body. And he's peeling out glass and he looks at me and he goes, they're laughing and bitching about being cold. He goes, I don't even have a fucking nose. And he's peeling glass out of his nose. And meanwhile, the other guy's, walking around with the colostomy bag and ended up becoming a Kenneth Cole model later on down the road. But having those type of father figures, that leadership, man, it's needed. We need to have it.
Yeah.
We need to have more of it. And even, I'm 36 and I still seek, older and wiser guidance. Cause I'm only learning as I'm making a mistake. It's just the reality.
Yeah. Mentorship, it's a part of life, and it continues. You don't just grow out of it. You develop, and you reach certain stages in life where you become the mentor now, and you still need mentorship of your own. But one of the most rewarding things that you will experience as a man is being able to be of service to somebody else that's younger, in the same position or in a different position as you were when you were going through your trials and tribulations. It never ends. We leave the military and we tend to think, well, that's the last time we'll be in NCO. It's the last time I'll be in charge of helping young men figure their shit out. Like, no, not true. Like a lot of us, you still have to do it for your own kids. You still got to do it for your community. And I constantly tell people, it's like, look around you and look where you can help improve somebody else's fighting position. Like, you remember those days.
You're 100% right. My neighbor, he lives in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm not going to say his name, but good kid. And, I'll put it to you this way. He was, I won't say infatuated, but he was so infatuated in a sense with who I was as a man and my character at the time. I was freshly married, just bought a house. And anyways, he was having some family problems, mom and dad fighting at home. This kid that he bought tattooed sleeves to look like me, asked to wear my rucksack and dressed up as Halloween as me. You don't talk about humbling. I'm like, I'm a freaking nobody. I mean, dude, I'm nobody you want to be. And so, the fact that he did that, I was like, we have a everyday humbling mission to bring it to not only people in the military, but to sons, daughters, let alone the average Joe, because
Yeah.
most civilians do not have the experience or have had their mettle tested to know where wise leadership lays.
Yeah. That's very true, man. It's something that not only is beneficial for you as a person that's helping inspire a next generation of great Americans, but it's something that's needed. I always say that the very best of our country has been gone. 20 years fighting a war, and there's a lot of people who need help. A lot of people that need somebody that can help them understand the power of being in discomfort, the power of doing hard things. And we're constantly battling this culture, this idea that we just need to be sedentary, we just need to be comfortable. Don't challenge yourself. If you have problems, take a pill and just complain about it on social media. And that's so fucking horrible for us. We have to
I
be
agree.
willing.
I agree.
We have to be willing to do hard shit. And every day I'm humbled by looking at what somebody from our community, the veteran community, soft community, what individuals are willing to do while they're still in service or even as soon as they get out to inspire and help change. Because we have our civilian brothers are suffering too. They're dealing with a lot of mixed messaging from nefarious people who just want to promote horrible messaging. And I think it's up to us to do better. And I want to ask you about your time in, man. Like, how did you progress from being this young, rough young kid? How did you develop and grow into your service, man?
Well, I appreciate you asking that. I I had a great time growing up in the military. I will say, a lot of people, they're not as fortunate. I had some of the greatest men truly I've ever had the pleasure to know. And it sounds like a fairy tale, but you could call any of these guys and they'll tell you I mean, even so we'll start. So I got the 10th Mountain Division and I showed up and I literally, this guy, Staff Sergeant Wynn was my platoon sergeant. He literally had no nose and I'm his RTO. And he literally said, don't come back until you find my nose. And I'm like, holy fuck, dude, where do I find your nose? Like it's just holes. It's like that Nicolas Cage character on the bike on fire.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. So, end of the day comes, I show up and I was like, hey, sorry, I can't find your nose. And he goes, yeah, no shit. He goes, come back tomorrow when you find it. And I was like, it's like my first day in the CP. Okay. So I don't even know like my ass from a hole in the ground. My team leader, he had just been shot through the leg into a nutsack. He had a fake noodle from running a guy over point blank.
Hmm.
I mean, like I said, the other guy, Moss, he had an RPG lodged in his stomach. So these are the guys I'm surrounded with. Like
Yeah.
everybody, my second team leader was struck by lightning. So,
Oh,
God
fuck.
bless him. Yeah, he was half retarded, but God bless him. I mean, in a good way. But, all these guys, they were driving Humvees with sandbags for floorboards. There was no such thing as up armored. Like, so, these guys were going through, and then on top of it, they got to Wheeler Sack and then got extended as they see their wives and girlfriends and brothers and cousins, sisters, whatever. They literally got off the bird, hugged, kissed, and turned right back around and went back
Oh,
to
shit.
Fob Tillman.
Okay, so that's actually a historic moment that's been talked about. I mean, we heard about that in the 82nd. Like, that is a historic moment in GWAT. That actually happened. That's fucking. It's an insane story. Before they figured out rotations, before they figured
got
out
hit with a stop loss for real, and a lot of guys. I don't know how they didn't come home crazier. And so, so that was my leadership. So I literally wake up at 3 a.m. and there's guys that are just raging and they're like, what are you doing in our room? And I'm like, holy fuck, where am I? Like, I'm just a private. I just got here. Fast forward, now I'm moving through the platoons and we're training and, you're meeting everyone that's coming in and, such great times, while being there. I mean, heck, two of my squad mates at one time, the one kid was on a live high speed chase going down 81 in New York to Virginia, hanging out the window with a bottle of Makers. Like, I'm like, this can't be the Army, right? So times progress on, all the wild shenanigans, and of course I love to get into wild shenanigans as well. So I'm trying not to, go down that path again and just focus. And thank God I did. So as time went on, I was an Alpha company and a light infantry company, and we were doing a lot of cool stuff, a lot of good training. And, I always wanted to go to the scout platoon, and they would never let me go. So you never want to let your, good guys go, cause you only have so many. I
Yeah.
don't say I'm a
Yep.
good guy, but you don't want to let the better of the herd leave, and so, it helps make the rest of the herd better, obviously. So, um, this guy, I never forget his name's Gonzo LaSalle. He's a good friend of mine. And this guy was the only guy I know that would lock up a sergeant major as an E7. And so I,
That's a story I want to hear.
I'm leaving battalion. I swear to God, I go up to battalion, that's in 3rd Brigade, 287. And, I saw this gentleman at the time, slick back hair. His name was Captain Mariani. And, I said, "Hey, what's up with these pre-ranger slots?" He goes, "We sent it out to the companies. Did you not hear about it?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "Hold on a second." He called up Last. He said, "Hey, Last, come up to battalion. I need someone to see you." So he comes walking from headquarters platoon, and like everyone knows, at the time who Gonzo LaSalle was. And so, he literally meets me halfway. He goes, "Start doing push-ups." So I started doing push-ups, no questions asked. And so before he even got to like 49, he was like, "Get up." He's like, "Do sit-ups." He's like, "Come over to the pull-up bar." Walks me into Alpha Company, tells my CO, Captain Thom, I think at the time, he goes, "I'm taking Private Hayes to pre-ranger. I'll see you in 2 weeks." And we just left. And I'm like, and in my head, I'm on cloud nine. I'm like,
Yeah.
but inside, I was like, "Sir." And so we left. And so, anyways, deployed with them. Halfway through my deployment with Alpha Company, I had a run in, I still am full of the piss and vinegar. So we get to Afghanistan, and where we deployed and jaw res initially, there was nowhere for us to live. So we lived outside of a Chinese compound, which had some reformed Taliban members living in there. And so, I'm not going to say the lieutenant's name now. He's on the other side essentially, but, um, our lieutenant was very squared away. So we were basically living there in a sense of watching, this compound, which is right next to a mosque and
Yeah.
a school. And so the French Foreign Legion, or as they were establishing themselves in that part of the country at the time, back in the end of 2008, beginning of 2009, when Afghanistan was actually declared under de facto Taliban control. And so, I'm pretty sure it was called Operation Shamshad, but it was the French Foreign Legion, or the French OMLT, Observation Mentoring Liaison Team. So I was lucky enough to be able to be the long range communicator with those guys and go out, 100 Afghan or however many Afghan on patrols along with my light infantry unit, and kind of be the relay, the counterpart between the two. Fast forward, had a falling out with this E6. I'll never forget it. And I don't mind calling him out. His last name's Messier, and he's a dirtbag. And, and he got on to me for carrying frag grenades, and we were going out. It was maybe 8 guys total, 9 guys. You had a gun team on each, top of a mountain, and me and the PL and the medic were in the middle. Long story short, we get back from this mission, and 3rd group at the time, who was outgoing, and 10th was, incoming. We were towards the bottom of Nurk Valley, and we were to clean up anything they didn't take care of. And so,
No.
it's just me and a lieutenant and a medic. And, I'm like, all we got's 5.56, automatic AK fire is going to pin us down easy. And so, especially when I want my medic up and shooting, right? Or my lieutenant. So I grabbed a bunch of fucking hand grenades. I'm Rambo'd up. I'm like, at least I can toss frags and we can break contact and get to one of the gun team positions, and, fucking thank you, Jesus. That's my plan. Well, we got back, and then the guy, basically scalded me because I was a PFC. I wasn't, worthy enough to carry frag grenades. And I basically made my way to the scout platoon that day. Guy's name was Sergeant Sullivan. He was a FO, he was a good fister. And, I basically said, I'm going to put a frag grenade in your, fart sack tonight. And basically my platoon sergeant Rao, he goes, "Hayes, you can't say that out here." And I said, "Well, I'll say it again. I'm going to frag that fucker in his sleep tonight." I said, "Because no man's going to tell me I can't protect myself or my lieutenant." And I said, "If we can all throw a baseball, we can throw a frag." So in that moment, I said, "I'm going to walk from here to Fob Airborne, or you can drive me. It's up to you." And I was pissed. I didn't give a fuck. I was like, this is how I'm dealing with it. This is what I have to live with here. And granted, we built our cop, at the time, Lieutenant Donovan built this cop, and we literally, you know, we had to steal everything we had. And the guy was a
Yeah.
genius. I mean, this lieutenant should have been given way more awards than what he had. I mean, we brought excavators and dozers and built a cop a general didn't even know existed. So I said, I'm going to walk from this cop to Fob Airborne. You can drive it. I showed up to Fob Airborne, and literally all the scouts were hanging outside their compound. And this guy, Sergeant Wash, never forget, he goes, I knew they were going to send you. I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I just threatened to kill an E6. He goes, oh, we needed a guy. And I was like, all right, well, I'm here now. So that's how I
Yeah.
showed up to the scout platoon, middle of Afghanistan. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It helped shape everything from my life from that point forward. Not that being with my infantry brothers and everyone there wasn't great, but it was destined for me to be there. Once I showed up there, the opportunities I was presented with, the people we worked alongside with, the amount of trust you are given as a 21-year-old kid who just celebrated your 21st birthday in Afghanistan. And I'm literally with two guys in a hide site, and you got to roll over and piss or shit in bags for a week or whatever you're doing. That is unparalleled to,
Yeah.
what I was just coming from. So, with that being said, all the cool stuff deployed overseas, you know, what's crazy is after I left that deployment, and I got back to Fort Drum, maybe 6 months later, I deployed again with Germany, a unit in Germany, and ran into those same exact guys. And they were like, are we in the Matrix? Like, how are we? You just left us. And,
Yeah.
with leadership there, I learned the biggest toll, um, that having bad leadership can take on men. And the guy's name is Darren Hidalgo, God bless him. And so he was a double amputee. I was in country maybe 3 days, and this unit, was so dicked up, man. And it never was spoken about. None of my guys spoke about it either, but I'll try to condense it. But it was just such a catastrophe that could have gotten way worse. And God bless everybody that was on ground that day. But, it started off as a 3 village KLE. And as we're making movement, we're being, basically surveyed by dudes on dirt bikes. And this is in southern Kandahar area. And so I'm used to being up in the mountains. So I'm like, this ain't right. This doesn't seem normal. And so, we're doing our thing. By the time we get to the 3rd village and we're rounding back to come to the cop, we're about an hour out if we leave that last village walking.
Yeah.
And, he steps on something called a crush bowl, which is basically a inverted bowl with aluminum, and, they make their pressure switches, and it can be on top of either anti-personnel mines or however they want to make it. And so, long story short, man, this is how much leadership is needed amongst all of men, and the confidence, even if you don't know what to do in that situation. And, as I say, we fall to our lowest level of not only training, but our lowest level of understanding in life. And,
Yeah.
we'll move obviously that into another direction. But with that being said, as soon as this guy stepped on this crush bowl, he was a double leg amputee. My company commander at the time, Captain Maples, his sling pulled his bicep all the way down to his wrist. So he was immobile. The medic, who was brand new, I'm pretty sure he somehow injected himself with morphine. The secondary platoon medic took care of the actual double amputee. And at this point, I think we were in a minefield. So I had to get that PSS 14 or whatever the handheld mine detector is. And one of my guys, Russell, we were about 15, 20 foot from the blast. I'm thinking we just took incoming. And so basically cleared our way out of this minefield that we're in, created an inverted Y stroke foot, medevaced it, so on and so on. But come to find out, it's like, man, even at the very end of this kid named Woods, he has his night vision up. He was the RTO. I was like, why is your night vision up? Why are you? Everyone was so distraught and just out of it. Like, I get it. A guy just lost his legs. He's going to expire because he's been here for 4 hours with no bird. That was it's a long story in itself. But again, the leadership wasn't there. And what I had learned while being in 10th Mountain and coming to Germany, I was like, man, you know, you guys, one, wouldn't have made it in the 10th, but two, you would have got eaten up. Like, it sucks to say this in the moment. You have to be emotionless and you have to be able to make a decision and lead, or nothing's going to add up. And the amount of ground
Yep.
you're taking, you're going to lose. And that translates into our personal life when we get out. Like, we get so shell shocked, or so, a buddy of mine says it's best. You know, his name's Tyler. He lives out on the West Coast, but he taught me this when I went through executive protection school: paralysis by analysis. And most of us get that paralysis by analysis, and we get locked in and we don't either progress in life, or we don't find a new job, or we don't know how to not be a tactical Todd no more, or whatever it is. So the leadership is absolutely key.
Yeah. It's funny. That's you meet people all throughout your career where that exact phrase speaks volumes to like that person. And that's, you're right. That transfers right over to civilian life. Like, you can waste so much time and effort trying to create the perfect plan, the perfect vision, or you can start working, man, or you can start moving, you can start progressing, build it in flight, man. Like, you cannot, like, that's one thing when lives are on the line, you can't just sit there paralyzed thinking of the what ifs. Make the best plan and execute. Fail fast, go forward, keep moving.
That's exactly what my buddy Tyler told me. Fail and fail fast. Hurry up and get to it. And then now let's get moving.
Yep. Yeah, dude. It's hard. It's going through those experiences, man. It's difficult, especially when people tend to think that every unit executes the same missions and they have the same SOPs, and that's not true. I've been fortunate to serve in some amazing platoons, amazing companies, and it just makes me appreciate those rough assignments where you weren't around with like the greatest individuals, and it sucks when all hell breaks loose and you're in one of those outfits, man. It's not, and that's the lived experience for so many of our veterans, man. It just goes to show you that you make your bread and butter in the training and what you do preparing for combat. You're not going to train in combat. You're not going to be able to execute if you didn't plan accordingly, if you didn't rehearse, if you didn't put the blood, sweat, and tears.
And that's funny you say
prior
that.
to deploying.
And that's haunted me to this day, because I literally asked him that question. And, you know, the day I met him, they were coming back from a place called Strong Point Printler. And a guy was blown up and killed, God bless him as well. But, you know, I said, hey, sir, do you want to talk about, you know, basically, are we going to have, what happens if we take contact here? Are we going to break contact? Or we can stay put, like whatever, HLZs, etc. And same thing. No, don't worry about it. And I was like,
the timeless, don't worry about it. We're not going to get hit. It's not going to be us. And then it is.
And then it was him. Yeah. That was the shittiest part, is it was him. Yeah. And I'm like, and none of our guys ever had an AAR. None of it was ever spoke about.
Really? Oh, gosh.
And the problem, and all these guys, they were young kids. They weren't on, I mean, this was like their first deployment. So they didn't know, you know, shit from fuck. They thought it was just a shitty day, a shitty night. And so that's what I mean. They didn't have the leadership to bring them where they needed to be. I mean, unfortunately, my platoon sergeant, he had a 10th Mountain patch on, and he used to always try to get me to cover for him. I'm like, dude, you're a turd. Like, don't ask me to cover because we're from the same unit. Like,
yo. And then, was that the unit that you ended up ETSing from, getting out from?
No, so after I got done in deploying with Germany, I came back. I was there for roughly a year. I was fortunate enough, as I came back, I was doing shoots and sneers qualification. And that same First Sergeant Cervenka, he sent me to HAC. I was doing some dive PT. This guy's so hardcore, he might have stepped on a Willie Pete anti-personnel mine and squirted his camelback into the mud and made a mud pie on his face to stop it from fucking spreading. But yeah, so this guy, he said, hey man, why are you doing dive PT? We were just doing bobs after the shoots and sneers swim. I said, well, PT time's not over, First Sergeant. I said, it's not 09 yet. And he goes, I didn't say that. And I was like, yeah, Roger. He goes, you're going to go to recon when we get back. I said, Roger that. So I finished out my time there, started their sniper section. I was a sniper section leader there for a good little while. Was able to experience a really cool place called Fullendorf, which is home of like the long range reconnaissance school. So it was very humbling to go there and work with 10th Group and all of NATO Special Forces there and get some cool schools and qualifications there. So once I got done, that was kind of my wrap up in Germany. Worked for this ops sergeant major on the way out, and then PCS to Wilmington, North Carolina, which I was voluntold to be a recruiter. I did not want to be, but that was and where I was at. I tried to go to be a drill. They wouldn't let me be a drill. Unfortunately, I was investigated for hazing while in Germany.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
that was great. So, but it all worked out full circle because the major that investigated me, I'll keep his name out of it, but I met him the deployment before. So he knew who I was and he was like, you're good. Don't worry. And so, we weren't doing anything crazy, man, but long story short, we were at a range, had two ASIPs, both of them were dead. And so my point was simply this:
Mm,
once we got back to the rear, this is where being that whole leadership, being that card comes into play.
yeah.
I said, look, if you're in country and you have no radios, how are you going to call for any CASEVAC, ground evac, any, artillery? You have nothing. I was like, comms are so important and critical.
Yeah.
I was like, let alone you can't even tell an adjacent unit where you are if you need QR. Like, and so I said, I brought him out back and had him in the front meeting rest. And the regimental sergeant major Parrish, F that guy. And so it would be the second highest ranking person on the entire post in Germany on Vilsack.
Yeah.
So the regimental sergeant major comes out of the coffee shop wearing his fucking cowboy hat and his Dallas Cowboy cheerleading gloves with the tassels and the Stetson swag. He's giddy
Yeah.
up ready, baby. And so he comes out, he's like, you're killing these guys. And I was like, what? And so nonetheless, he started the investigation, and because they were in the push-up position, the front leaning rest, for more than 2 minutes and 36 seconds, it equated to more than 10 repetitions. And by whatever the doctrine is at that time that stated that, it's how I got convicted for hazing. So I
Wow.
left Germany as en route to be a recruiter. That's why I couldn't be a drill. So came to Wilmington, North Carolina, was a recruiter there, and I didn't want to be. I had the option to get out, but at the time it was a 1059 school. And so, for those who don't know, if you don't complete a 1059 school at a certain point where the Army was, they were going to chapter
Yep.
you out.
Oh yeah. It's a big deal.
And so,
Gonna get that honor grad.
yeah, I got undergrad all right. I got arrested in recruiting school and still graduated. So
Holy shit.
I'm the only person to date.
It's like a hat trick.
That I know of. I am the only person to date, and I hope I'm not killing this full bird at this point, but to graduate recruiting school. But I was doing the right thing. It was St. Patrick's Day, and I was with a bunch of guys, and I was trying to get some guys in a cab, and a bunch of undercover cops. There was a fight going on, and I guess they thought we were part of it. One of them grabbed me. I instinctively turned around, knocked him out, and then next thing you know, it's a bunch of sled cops.
Ooh.
And anyways, it all got handled. But I walked into class and they had Akon locked up and ready to be played and queued for me to walk into class. So I then graduated on the highest note and showed up to Wilmington as a recruiter. And I had a good time there. I'd go rent the Hummer H3 from the battalion. I'd be on the beach cruising the beach, putting up. I enjoy. I don't want to be there. No offense to anyone who's been a
Yeah.
recruiter and loves recruiting. It's just not my thing. And but quite honestly, it worked out very well for me because the more I denied people, the more people wanted to join me. I had one kid who was severely overweight, and he wanted to go be a ranger. And I said, "You'll never make it, man." I said, "You gotta get your body right, etc."
Yeah.
Kid busted his ass, and every time his dad saw me in town, because it's such a small town, his dad's a very big, high up guy for Piedmont Gas, Mr. Randy, if you're watching. He came up and he thanked me because this kid was never going to do anything. Next thing you know, this kid's in a Ranger battalion, and the kid was like 250-pound, short, frumpy kid, and now he's lean and mean fighting machine. And So, as bad as recruiting sucked, it was good to see I had an impact on people, and put a lot of good
Yeah.
kids in boots. And so after that, I realized the amount of politics that are in the military because you're so far away from the flagpole. It kind of
Yeah.
just ruined the military. And I got out after my stint in recruiting.
Yeah. It's not always, it's one of the most stressful positions you can be in the military. And those guys get, I mean, you lived it. You get,
There is a number, there's a quota.
no
Like
kudos, no data boys.
you
Yeah.
gotta, it's like, man, people are literally, you're having to poach kids out of class. I'm like, I'm not down for that. Like this, you're literally having to coerce people to join. And then the ones that want
Yeah.
to join, they can't because they can't pass, arithmetic reasoning or whatever on the ASVAB, but they're the most qualified. And it's a heinous job. It really is.
Yeah. So you get out of recruiting, and how was that transition like? Because that's honestly the thing that a lot of people don't put enough emphasis and they don't prepare for, is that final exodus from the military.
So fortunate, but unfortunately, I was expedited so quick out of the military because of where I was at. I'd never stepped foot on
Yeah.
Fort Bragg until I out processed, the recruiting company I was assigned to. Um, and so I didn't attend any briefings. No one taught me how to write a resume. No one said, hey, look for jobs here. Here are some companies that would correlate to what you can do. Like I had like zero, no clue. And so, I just got out and I was in Wilmington. I started, bouncing, trying to figure it out. And I was working at bars and just making money. And, eventually while bouncing, met a guy who worked at the VA hospital there in Wilmington, as a medical support assistant at the time, which basically you help schedule vets, appointments and get them to and from their appointments. And
Yeah.
so, I was like, all right, and that's 30 grand a year. And, it wasn't nothing. And I was really behind, the army, you don't make a lot of money, as a lot know. And so I was doing that and, just kind of had no plan, like literally no plan. I was like, I'm just going to take whatever to sustain and live. And so, still hadn't met my dad yet, like 3 years after this, I think I met my dad for the first time ever. So I'm just roughing it now in this town where I have no friends, essentially no family. And, I was dating this girl at the time. And so I was kind of like using that as my crutch to like help me get my confidence and figure out, what to do. And eventually, I had a few corporate jobs when I worked there. I worked for a big company, Johnson Controls and a few other. And I just, while working for corporate, realized I can't do this. I don't know what it is about me or that the way I think, but I can't work with people in a corporate environment on that level. They're just so disrespectful and like, you're not a human, you're a robot. And so I started my own business at the time. I was like, and I just started Googling. I was like, how do you start your own business? How do you start an LLC? And so,
Yeah.
you know, at that time, all I knew was guns and shooting, and I'm in the mecca, of all of that. So I
Yeah.
started the Jackal contingency group, and I was sponsored by G Code at one point. I was doing a lot of stuff, had my own range. I was working with Marsoc a lot at the old Camp Davis, doing a lot of training, offsite training for them. And so it just kind of all fell into place. And then, I got divorced. Got married and then divorced. And then it all kind of came crashing down. And, I was like, well, what do I do? Cause I'm bouncing from job to job. And so, now I'm like, all right, well, the VA was cool, but that only lasted a little while. And I'm like, I need more money. I can't live on 35 grand. So then I went to work for Johnson Controls. That was more money, but it was corporate. And so I don't have any brothers. I don't, because most of I say brothers, like military brothers, we're all scattered to the four winds. We're all trying to live life,
Yeah.
sustain life, create life, whatever we're doing. So me calling them like, man, they probably got the same shit going on behind their door. So how do I, and so I kind of just, suffered in silence, as they would say, and just figured it out and trudged along. But I knew like, okay, look, I'm not going to give up. And so no shit, man. I'm just, talking with guys, networking. Next thing you know, I end up on a support role for A&S for MARSOC. And so I'm up at 8P Hill doing some stuff for MARSOC, and I meet a guy who's one of the main psychological, evaluators on this lane. And he's like, hey, what are you doing after this? I said, and I just got divorced. This is about 5, 6 years ago now. And so I said, I'm just trying to find a job. I'm just trying to, figure out what's the next step. I said, ever since I've been in Wilmington, I haven't had a plan. I haven't had a career, and I got married, and now I'm divorced. So now I'm really just house of cards again. So, I show up to Texas, and all I know is I'm working, on this ranch for this billionaire lady. And so I'm like, I have no clue. I'm like, am I going to be roping horses? Like, and so she has a personal security detail or whatever you want to call it. But I was an advisor for her. So I got hired as an advisor to go there and watch over the security and essentially just help make them better. And so, so while I was there doing that, I had a lot of time. You're talking 12-hour shifts, and, not like the whole, everyone jumps on the Jesus train or the Bible train, but I started asking myself, cause I'd lost while in Texas, my trash cans were repossessed to my house. And
Fuck.
Yeah, no, it's possible.
Fuck.
Shout out GFL. Not once, but twice. So
took fucking everything, including the trash.
I walked out with two handfuls of trash, and I was like, God Almighty! I was like, you're teaching me something right now, Lord. I just don't know what it is. And so I started, again, I
that's got to be a humbling experience going over your neighbor.
What's even more humbling is putting it in your car and driving that shit somewhere and trying to, and yeah. But I even had to sell a leaf blower. I sold my leaf blower and lawnmower, and I probably shouldn't have done that before I sold my house, just to pay my cell phone bill. Like, I had nothing, I didn't have my dad wasn't calling to help me, my mom, she's not in position to help.
Yeah.
And I don't really have anyone else. So it's like, what do you do? And the number one thing that I remember in the very beginning, go all the way back now, is like, man, it's as long as you, like you said, always improve upon your position. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what direction I was going, but I tried to pick the best direction I could. And that, even if it's just for that day, even if that meant going from north to east tomorrow, at least today, I know I'm going north and I'm making ground here, and I might lose a little bit going, back east, but now I'm going in the right direction. And that alone helped keep my mindset at a point. I was ready to throw in the towel, dude. I was $1 million in debt. I had a G-Wagon. I had a $550,000 house. I was left with everything on top of, police getting involved, absurd charges, had all my guns taken away. I've got videos of, New Hanover County Police Department, SWAT team, FBI, Safe Streets chasing me just to serve a civil order that they can mail to you. Damn. And then eventually arrested me and let me go for failure to heed lights and sirens. So I just got done building up this business, the Jackal Contingency Group, and things are going great. And then I get hit with a surprise divorce. Now I'm $1 million in debt, literally just under, and I have no financial income coming in except my disability. I'm 100% disabled. So now I'm like, okay, and of course, whenever you need something the most is when people avoid you the most or don't answer. And it's like, man, everyone I called, I say everyone, there's a good 5 or 6 people who held it down for me. Bailed me out of jail when my wife made up fictitious charges, picked me up, helped pay for a lawyer. And those people know who they are. And, without them, I wouldn't even be where I'm at right now. So I was lucky enough through all of that. And I've talked to a lot of these guys that we spoke about in the very beginning. And, more recently, are more and more men are reaching out. And it's like, everyone's got a story. We all have a story. I guess to consolidate everything I'm saying here is, like I said in the beginning, guys like us, we've had our metal tested. We've all been through something crazy. Yeah, you might not have had a 15-page search warrant where they included weapons of mass destruction that they searched for. Okay. But yeah, they took my Christmas lights, but it's like, you know what I can share with other men now, especially, in men's mental health
Yeah.
month. It's like, while we can't help everybody, we can help somebody. And I was fortunate enough to somehow find my way through it. I don't know how or what I did or what I used. I'm still evaluating that. I'm sure it's something I learned from somebody along the way. But I can tell you, the whole paralysis by analysis thing was definitely the number one thing that kept me from saying, I got to do something. So then I started another business. I was like, all right. So I lost it all in North Carolina. I have some good friends and contacts there. So I moved down to Florida. So I'm in Florida now, back in where I grew up. So really, really
Nice.
cool wraparound story. Yeah. I left here at 18 and I came back here 18 years later at 36 years old. So, I met a guy in my neighborhood. He's old school, legitimate nurse. And he just got done jumping in, to Normandy with a World War II veteran on the last reunion they had. And,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
so yeah, his name's Chet, and great guy. And everything's coming around full circle. So I'm living in the same neighborhood I grew up in. I've now created two new businesses. I've restarted. It's no longer Jackal Contingency Group. I now have Jackal Group, and I've started another company called TFK, the Florida Commandos. And so the Florida Commandos is just an outdoor based community group. It's those who just go out and do commando shit. You've got scuba dive, snorkel, bow hunt, dirt bike, but I want all those people, and we're going to start coming together, and I'm going to start having them bring their sons and their daughters, and we're going to start having events that start building this up. And it's the only thing I can think of to navigate through what we're talking about, how men, need guidance and leadership, and let alone entrepreneurship. You start having these community
Yeah.
events, and that's why I've got out of the tactical realm. We have to attach our identity to something other than just being a freaking tactical Steve. You know, you're never going to keep up with the Joneses. You're just not. And as cool as it
Yeah.
is, and I love to shoot my guns, but it's not putting money on my
It's
table.
not everything, man. Yeah.
It's not putting money in my bank account or food on my table. It's not gonna, ultimately provide for me and my family. We're not hunting every day to kill our food. What is teaching guys, hey, if you have two or more LLCs, now you can create a diversified business. And while you might not know what business you want to do, I guarantee you'll spend $1,000 this year on some bullshit that you'll never use more than 2 or 3 times, whether it be shoes, clothes, or a belt. If you took that money and had guys like us, like we're sitting here right now, and said, hey, have you thought about starting an LLC on Rocket Lawyer? If you have two or more, you can have a diversified company. And it's like, now you can just start pitching stuff to companies and creating your own work. And essentially that's what I've done since I've encountered being divorced. I literally was cleaning solar panels on people's homes in Wrightsville Beach and telling them, hey, every 6 months you have to clean your solar panels. And if you Google it, it's true. And so, I figured out a way. I'm like, how do I survive? Because if I don't do anything, I'm not going to
Yeah.
survive. And no one's coming. No one wants to come. And when everyone knows you're suffering, no one wants to come around that. You know what I mean? And it's harder. And I noticed it. And anytime I would vent or I would expose things to people, a lot of people don't know what to do or what to say or how to even render advice to someone in that situation. So I had to learn how to be very mentally resilient. I'm like, all right, well, how can I? And it's just like, we've been through so much in our just training, let alone deployments. I think that the guys that I've learned everything from, if they were to look at me and say, hey, what would you say about Brandon at the end of the day? That's kind of what's always stuck in my head. And, it sounds kind of cliche. Not that it matters what people think about you, but at the end of the day, if I were to die tomorrow, I'd want you to be like, man, hey, the guy was a great guy. He got after it. And
Yeah.
if he had $5, he'd give you 250. That's
Yeah.
overall, that's how I kind of I want,
That's more than enough.
it's like at the end of the day, this is what I want to be doing now in life, is helping out, veterans and veterans families or their kids. Because there's a lot that
Yeah.
can be shown. There's a lot of good things that can be instilled. And sometimes some guys, don't have it in them to do it. I had a man in Waffle House, a veteran. I was teaching some stuff for the Ohio Range Day, and he came over and bought our breakfast, and he said, "I wish I could look like you guys." And he had his son right next to him. You want to talk about humbling? I was like, "Holy
Yeah.
cow! You're standing next to your son, saying, 'I wish I could look like you.'" Not that we're like studs and Jackal in shape or anything, but he clearly knows what his son wants to look up to. And so
Yeah.
I think now, with all of us looking at how we can do stuff with each other, having that type of aura it's pretty rewarding in itself, just to have people come up and say, "It's clear you guys do something, I want to buy your breakfast." And that's exactly what happened. He didn't know
Yeah.
who we were. We literally were just in black shirts and
Yeah.
some pants.
Yeah. That's fucking awesome, man. Brandon, I want to thank you for coming on today, man. If people want to connect with you and learn more about your story, how can they get a hold of you?
They can just go on my Instagram to Jackal6Actual, reach out to me. I'm sorry if I don't get back to you. I do have a lot of messages. Not that I'm super popular or anything, but I do try to help out every single person that messages me. My house has been flooded recently, so that's what I'm going to be taking care of
No.
after this,
Fuck.
after I get off the phone here. But yeah, no, hit me up on Jackal6Actual on Instagram. If there's anything I could ever do for any veteran out there, I have a good Rolodex. I have a good amount of people who we just want to help. The more we help each other out and see other men and women do better, the more it comes back to us tenfold. So if you need help with disability, increasing your rating or having some understanding of it, I fought for 5 years in one mind at 100%. So I know a little bit about stuff like that. I know some other folks that have that more and better experience with it as well. But yeah, if there's anything I can do to help out anyone in any community, I'm all about it. And the more that we can build it together, I think will obviously show here in the next coming months.
Absolutely, brother, man. Iron sharpens iron. We all need to help establish a greater, more positive veteran community. So you heard it here, folks. Slide into Brandon's DMs, flood his inbox, and ask any question. Brandon, thanks again for coming on, brother.
Thanks for having me so much.
Please. Absolutely, man. Stay in touch and please be safe taking care of that flooded house.
Thanks. Talk to you soon, brother. Have a good one.
We'll see you all next time. Till then, take care. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe.